Hi, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we research ways to achieve those two goals and we invite friends on to help us. And today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Sheila Farragher-Gemma. Probably I screwed that up, but she will correct me and say, Chris, I told you 10 times. Farragher-Gemma. Okay. She moved to the States in 1989 to take a job in Boston and, figured she'd stay a couple of years and then go home to Ireland. But 30 years later, she has a husband, 2 kids, and a handful of successful businesses under her belt. So there's a chance she might actually be going to stay a while. Sheila, like many of us, has an entrepreneurial spirit, and that led her to the world of marketing consulting because, with no marketing, you got no business. Through her company is called Connected Sponsor, and she helps event promoters monetize their events by building long-standing relationships and partnerships with sponsoring companies. Some events she's helped with, you might have heard of: Traffic and Conversion, Profit Con, Underground, and MFA Live. Is that MFA?
It's Top Brand's company.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
Top
Okay.
Brand, yeah. I think I think they're E3 now, or ES3 or something. They've rebranded.
So cool. So Sheila, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Christine. I'm really happy to be here.
So there's so many things I feel like we could talk about because I know you've sold a bunch of businesses successfully. Yep. And I think that's something that I really would like to delve into, but maybe you can come back and we can talk about that. Today, I want to talk about this idea, and again, selfishly, because this is something I've been thinking about, is the idea of monetizing events, things that you want to do anyway. And this podcast absolutely falls into that category because I feel like I do it. I would do it. I would pay to do it. I do pay to do it, right? Because I pay the editor and it's so fun for me and I love talking to people and stuff. But if I could actually get paid to do it, if I could have a sponsor or whoever to say, oh, yeah, we really would like to pay you to do your podcast. Well, obviously that's just a bonus, right?
Exactly.
So first, before we even talk about how one would go about that, can we talk about like the trade-offs? Would I be giving up some creative license? And one of the reasons I asked this, I just yesterday was at the Crazy Horse Monument in some place near Mount Rushmore, South Dakota. I don't even know what town it is, but the artist had given up 2 opportunities to get $10 million grants.
Wow.
Because because he felt that they weren't going to finish the project the way he would, or they wouldn't even finish it at all, or whatever. And I thought, well, if you take that money, isn't it still your project? So can you just are there trade-offs? Would I be giving up? Would anyone who wants to take someone in, and I even am thinking of like political sponsors, right? I'm going to be taking money from this particular group. Are there any downsides to that?
I think if you choose wisely, there aren't. When you're thinking about a sponsor, I kind of think of it in a Venn diagram. So there's the podcast host, there's your listeners, and then there's the sponsors. So all 3 of you kind of have to win in the situation. So if your listeners are coming to you because they're entrepreneurial, they're looking for some sort of transformation in their life, or maybe just for that nugget to kind of move them forward another piece in their business or in what they're trying to do or achieve, I'm assuming, right? From 5 minutes of chatting with you before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Started here. So like what the type of sponsors you want to be looking at are companies or resources that can help them get there. So, your podcast is great. You're giving them great information. You're doing interviews with people. So that's all helpful. But what are some of the resources that could actually help them get there as well? So I'd start thinking of it in terms of that. And sponsoring is kind of like advertising, really. You had asked that in your email. It's very similar. Like they're looking for access to your audience, basically. So, they're winning by getting access to your audience, getting their message out there in front of more people that are their demographic of people they're trying to bring into their business. Your audience is winning because they're now finding a new resource that they maybe didn't know about before. Maybe the sponsor is offering some sort of an incentive for them to take a look. with like a discount or, you know, a free trial or something like that. And then you're winning twice, because you're bringing, you know, value to your audience or your listeners, but you're also being monetized, which means that you're not paying for editing, your sponsor's not paying for it, or you're not paying for all the other costs that come into the podcast that we don't realize until we start doing it. And it's like, oh, this is a lot of money. So it's just kind of curating that thing. So you want to look at who your audience are, as much as possible, and what is it that they need. And I've seen some people actually even just do out a survey and say, you know, where are you struggling? What do you think would be helpful for you? Maybe it's email marketing, maybe it's a CRM, maybe it's merchant processing. You know, there's a whole bunch of different things it could be. So those are great guests for you to bring on, and then they're also great sponsors for you to bring on, because they're great resources for your listeners. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it
And
absolutely
you write your
does.
own contract based on, you know, what they get, what they give you. Just make it very clear. And, you know, they don't kind of own the right to your podcast or own any of that. You own that yourself. It's yours. They're just kind of a guest,
Okay.
sponsoring guest.
Yeah, and so you're not selling your soul, you're just almost collaborating with someone.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like a strategic partnership. But like, I mean, I feel like it is sometimes, you know, it's you're helping them, they're helping you. It's all win-win-win. Like your audience are winning as well. So it's just, and there's no kind of rule book on sponsorship. There's no like, you know, sponsorship has to be this, this, and this, or it's not a sponsorship. It's like two people getting together and saying, what do you need? What do I need? How can we mesh this together and make it work for both of us?
Excellent. Okay, so now let's say, I mean, I think you've already started talking about this a little bit, like when, like, let's say I was like, okay, I'm ready. I want to bring on some type of a sponsor. So then how would I begin to, I mean, I know when you have like a 1 million person podcast, people are coming to you and saying, please take my money. But let's say that isn't happening yet. Or let's say even that I'm doing a new event that no one's ever done before, and I want to have this entrepreneurial event and have people come. How do you begin to explore who would be a possible sponsor? Like, who would have the pockets to do it? Who would have the desire to do it?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you just start to look and kind of what would be your wish list of sponsors? Who do you think your clients or your listeners need right now? What would be a good resource for them? And just start making a list of those companies. And usually as you brainstorm it out, you'll find that, you know, you think of one CRM and then you think of 5 others. So put all 6 on your list, and, you know, then it's a lot of legwork. It's not as easy as just picking up the phone and cashing a check. But, you know, kind of brainstorm that out. I actually have a freebie on my website that you can, it's called Follow Your Checkbook, that back in a long time ago in my first business, I was in B&I, and that was one of the ways that we generated leads by doing visitors days. We would follow our checkbook. So who are we doing business with that may be beneficial for them to be in B&I? So I kind of put the same thought behind finding sponsors. You know, if you're running an event, especially if you teach what you do, like what are the resources you're using, and would these be helpful to your listeners? Same with the podcast. But it's just starting that brainstorm and starting to create a list of companies that you think would be good, and then, you know, it starts to feed on itself. Then you reach out to one company. I always ask for referrals when I'm talking to somebody, you know, whether they're going to come in as a sponsor or not. You know, do you know anyone else that this might be good to? Because if they're out there sponsoring, they're seeing each other at events, they're, you know, they're making friends at events and stuff like that, so they will know of other companies that are out there trying to promote their business right now as well. So it's not really rocket science. It is legwork though. It's not kind of a get rich quick, or, you know, you don't just like hang your shingle and they line up outside your door like the Apple store. It doesn't happen like that for us yet.
So Sheila, how did you get into this? How did you sort of get started with this?
So how I got started way back when was when the guy I met in America that caught me over here, and I haven't left since, we got married and had a child. And when I had that child, I was actually working in biotech, and I just did not want to go back to work after I had her. I wanted to be home with her. I just wanted to be like a real part of her life. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was kind of looking around and trying to find different different opportunities or work from home kind of opportunities or something part-time, or I was really kind of desperate not to be like out in the workforce. And my dad actually knew of a company in California that was doing remanufactured toner cartridges, of all things, but this back in 1996, before it was even a thing. So I started doing it out of my basement and had it for like 8 years. That was one of the businesses I sold. But it just, it did what I needed it to do. It brought in enough money that I was like contributing, but I was home. Like Ashton used to come with me on calls, but I used to deliver everything myself, and she'd come with me. She'd be in the car seat, and I had my thing at toner on the other side, and go into the offices, and people loved it. It was like I was kind of doing it on my own terms. But through that, there was a string of other kind of businesses, some great, some not so great. But one of the last businesses I had before this was a group called Affiliate Mastermind Group. So it was for affiliate marketers and JV brokers, and we used to put on events for them and just kind of educate them on strategic partnerships and that kind of stuff. And I was in that business with a woman called Deanna Rogers, who got recruited towards the end of it out to Digital Marketer. That's the big digital marketing company. They run TNC. And when she went to work for them, she's their director of events. She's amazing. She runs all of their events. But when she went to go work for them, she asked me if I could come in and help out with sponsorship, which I did for a couple of years. And that kind of just shone a big light on what I was doing. Other people saw what I was doing for them, and they asked me to start doing it. So it just kind of happened organically. It wasn't something that I sat down and made a business plan and said, okay, this is what I'm going to be now. But it just kind of happened. So that's the shorter version of the whole process.
Yeah, that can be fun though. It's kind of nice when you can just follow the path and see, oh, this is what I was meant to do. I sometimes feel that way when different things happen. I think, oh, now I see how all roads have led me.
Yeah, it's
place,
like
right?
everything, even there was some things that were just very different, but everything kind of led to this. So, the people I met doing other things, the partnerships I had, the businesses I had, all kind of led to this. And I'm not sure if this is the end either. Who knows what's going to come after this? But, that's what I enjoy. It's just like being entrepreneurial. I think you're kind of, oh, look, a butterfly. As soon as I talk to somebody about what they're doing, I'm like, wow, I could do that too. And I start thinking,
It's funny. That's literally how I got into real estate. I mean, I had taken my test. Oh man, I don't know, when I was like 25 and didn't pass it. And so I just let that whole dream go. And then later on, I don't even know. I must have been in my 40s. And I ran into a friend of mine and I said, oh, how are you doing? She goes, oh, I just passed my real estate license test today. And I thought, I went home and I thought, oh, I want to do that too. And I called her up the next day. I said, would you feel like I was copying you if I did it? She's like, of course not. So and when I went back and took the test, they said, oh, you pay less because you've taken it before. And I was like, I did?
Wow.
I'd totally forgotten. But yeah, it was just like that. Oh, she's doing it. I want to do that. That sounds fun. And yeah. And I suppose same with the podcast and same with a lot of other things that I'm doing. You see someone and think, oh yeah, okay.
I did my real estate exam as well in maths years ago. It's a tough test, a lot of math, but it's fun. We used to do a lot of real estate investing. I had a company here called Foreclosures Mass, where we had a database of foreclosures that are happening in Massachusetts that people would subscribe and reach out to the homeowners. And so that was kind of the big reason we became realtors, was because when we're with a homeowner, if it didn't make sense to buy the home, we'd say, well, we can list it for you at least and get it sold, so get you out of the situation. So that was pretty cool. But it's a tough test. I'll never forget that one. The math almost killed me.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. And they've just taken on a new company. It's kind of a detour, but a new company just started administering the test, and they almost want you to fail. I know some people have taken it 8 times. Yeah, the questions, people who are taking the test will ask me the question, I'm like, I have no idea what the answer to that is. After doing real estate for 12 years, I'm like, that's a random thing that I have no idea the answer to that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you either study or you just don't pass it. So.
Yeah,
it's interesting. But now it's so funny, all the different paths that you've taken, right? As we're getting more and more into it. And I think foreclosures is something that we're going to need again, that database.
I don't know if we'd start up the company again, but it's definitely, I hope not. I hope it's going to be better this time, but it's definitely not looking good out there.
Yeah, things are changing a bit. So let's talk about, I mean, I really, I know this is going to be kind of an unfocused podcast, but I don't think I like that about it today because you have so much to offer. There's so much that you've done that I know folks who are listening want to do. When, you know, when you decide, okay, this thing, like the toner thing, okay, you were looking for something and then the toner thing just sort of presented itself. How did you make that successful? How did you say, like, here's an idea, I've got like a little thread, and now I'm going to keep pulling it until I can make it into a business that's something I could turn around and sell? How did
Yeah.
you, what was that process?
Well, it kind of honestly really wasn't a process. It was just kind of like a whole bunch of mistakes and stumbling around and kind of figuring it out. But you know, what had happened was I was sitting, like, I had really bad postpartum depression. I was sitting watching TV one morning and the baby was sleeping. My parents were staying with me to kind of just help with everything when you have a newborn. And this thing came on TV, and it was you know, one of those informational things, you know, come to this hotel and pay $10 and we're going to present 4 different businesses, and it was like total hype. But like when I saw it on TV, I was like, oh my god, that's the answer, you know. And I pulled out a credit card and bought a ticket for myself and my dad, and we went up to Danvers and sat in this thing, and it was so hypey. It was like unbelievable. But it started the conversation with dad on the way home. He's like, well, what do you think you want to do? And I was like, honestly, I haven't a clue. I was like, I'm just trying and find a job part-time somewhere. Like, I wasn't even thinking entrepreneurial or starting something of my own. I didn't, like, I was brought up to kind of like get a permanent pensionable job and you know, go to college, get a degree, get a job. And that's what I'd done. I'd been working for about 6 years. And he had a friend, as I said, in California, and we actually paid him, I think it was like $2,000 or something, for me to go there for a week just to learn the ropes of how to do these things. It was all done by hand. So when I came back, you know, and as I was talking to him and looking at what kind of clients he had and stuff like that, when I came back, I was like, well, accountants print a lot, so I'm just going to, you know, start calling on accountants. And through that, I called on one woman, and I think, like, I get away with a lot because I'm Irish as well. People hear the accent, especially in the Boston area, and they're just like, oh, you're Irish, my nana was Irish, and next thing you know, it just opens all kinds of doors. But this woman ordered 2 cartridges, and it was 2 that I didn't have the equipment to make. So I called the guy in California. I was like, okay, you need to overnight these to me, which meant I was making no money anyway, like at that point, you know. So that he overnights them, they arrive, and literally as UPS are pulling up to my door, she calls me up and she's like, actually, we're not going to go ahead with the order. She says, but I want to tell you about my boyfriend. He has this he was kind of a president of like a town networking meeting or something, and I want to introduce you to him. So that kind of started it. And I, you know, he made some introductions for me, and then it was just like a lot of hustle, and BNI was huge for it as well. But it was just, you know, picking up the phone and calling people, and which was terrifying, but it was just, you know, just doing it. And it's just one foot at a time. Honestly, if you're starting something, it's the consistency of doing things. Just like keep doing something, you know, even if you feel like you're just, you know, speaking to a vacuum. You know, it all does add up eventually. It just doesn't feel like much in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it kind of, something will open up, and that thing may not have opened up if you hadn't done all the things that didn't work beforehand. So it's just a matter of kind of keeping your head down and doing it. And you know, there's so much self-doubt. There's like, god, is this even a thing? Like, will this work? Am I going to waste like years of this to only to find that it didn't work? It's like, it's hard. It really is hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to do importing. I got into, like, same thing. I just followed some weird thread, and I ended up, next thing I knew, I was importing stuff from overseas and
Yeah.
going to stores, like, you know, just walking into stores and saying, hi, you know, would you like to buy my stuff? You know, going
It is.
straight to just
It's really
totally
hard. Yeah.
fumbling around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
But
at the end saying, oh, you know what, I really don't like this. I like the traveling. I like the shopping. I don't like the packaging and the selling and all this other stuff. And just like, and then it just goes away after, you know, 7 years of doing it. It's like, well,
yeah.
that really wasn't my thing, as it turns out, you know.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but you said
But look
2
at all the
things.
things you learn along the way. That's the important
Right.
thing. It's like, you know, you like, if you hadn't done that, and then 7 years later you had an opportunity, would you walk into a store and try and sell something? You'd be terrified again. But now you're just like, you know, I don't care. I'm just gonna, you know, they're either gonna say yes or no, and we're good. You know, either way.
Right, exactly. But you said 2 things that I think are really key to success as an entrepreneur, and I want to talk a little bit more about them. The first was you thought to yourself, accountants use a lot of ink, so I'm going to specialize on those. And that idea of niching, like I've talked to a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and that's been a key. So did you just do that? Tell me how you decided to do that.
Honestly, I just thought there's a lot of pages in a tax return and they're printing them out. This wasn't much more than that. But it is like, just try and think, like I was trying to find how to best leverage myself. It's like you can do a lot of once-offs to a whole bunch of people, but if I could find somebody who is, buying 10 or 20 or 50 toners a month, that would be just so much better. So it's just trying to find those high use people first. And then, you can fill in the cracks with like people who are just not doing as much, that's fine. But if you have like, a few people who are buying a lot from you, you don't want to focus just on one, because that can ruin your business as well if they stop buying from you. But just trying to go after kind of the higher use people to just, monetize it quicker.
Yeah, some people I think would have gone more with the buckshot approach and just say, I'm going to stop at every single place and just say, I want some toner, I want some toner. But you're not going to have the same impact, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you can try and get more focused impact, and it's hard as well because, it's like niching down, you're like, but I'm going to miss all of this other business, which, you are, but you're not, because if you're going down kind of one or two niches that are just better for you, they're just going to be a better client for you. And it's all a learning process as well. I mean, you may find out that accountants aren't a great client because they were a good client. So but I also did kind of the same thing with attorneys on the same premise. They print a lot of stuff. So
yeah, and the other thing that you said, so that's key, right? Instead of saying I'm going to spend all this energy and find out that they only print 2 pages a month, and I'm going to think, okay, how can I best direct my energy so that I'm going to get some momentum that's going to allow me to keep going, right? And the other thing that you said was that you just kept doing it, like persistence. Like I'm doing this thing and it really sucks and I'm doing it every day, but I'm going to just keep doing it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again. How do you keep motivated? How do you, get yourself to a point where you're like, no matter what, I'm going to do this thing, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is really hard. Sometimes I just try and do one. Like, I mean, if I'm having a day where I'm just like, oh, this isn't working and this is a waste of my time and all the doubt comes flooding in, like I'll try and just do one thing, just one. It doesn't matter what the thing is, a small thing, a big thing. Let's just do one thing and achieve one thing today. And sometimes that momentum then gets you going and it just like that doubt goes away and then you kind of get into it and you're working again. And sometimes you do that one thing and then you just go for a walk or something because you're just like so doubtful of whether this is even going to work or not. But just, doing nothing is not going to move forward ever. So. Oh, I think I've lost you.
Yeah, no. Sometimes instead of doing, why am I still muted? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You just for a second, you're yeah.
My lips were moving, but I was muted. Yeah. And then after I unmuted, I got the note, you're muted. I'm like, no, I think I just unmuted. In this time, and I say this as a real estate agent, talking to a lot of other real estate agents, but I know it's not unique to us, that you can be doing nothing, like reading email for 7 hours and feel like you're doing something, right? Like, look, I have an empty inbox, woohoo, right? Yeah. But how can we differentiate, like, what's actually something that's gonna, like, is 7 hours on email, is that really doing something? How do we prioritize? I mean, is this something that you have a talent for, like prioritizing what's actually one thing that's gonna
one piece of advice I got years ago, and I've heard it several times since as well, so I don't think it was unique to this guy, but was to what are the 3 big things you need to achieve in a day? So, and it's going to be different for everyone, but like, what are the things that are going to make an impact? And like opening your email kind of will, but not really. I mean, it's, you can do that whenever, and you get sucked into, like, I get sucked into, I go on Facebook groups and try and post in them and everything. And next thing I'm just like scrolling through Facebook and I have a list of the groups I'm meant to be posting through, but it's an hour later and I'm just like looking at somebody's dog and, it's like, what am I doing? But But have your three big things that you need to, and not necessarily big things, but your three things that you need to do that are going to move you forward with something. Whether it's like it could be as simple as, I haven't heard from Christine, so I'm just going to send her an email and see if we're still on for the podcast today or something like that. Just do that, move that forward. And then I think as well, a lot of planning. It's like, as you're looking at your week, rather than just kind of falling into it and opening the computer and having to tell you what to do next, kind of plan out your week and what you want to do. Is there, like, do you want to get an email series written? When is that going to happen? Let's block time in the calendar for that, or whatever it is you need to do. Just kind of, I guess, trying to pick the things that you feel are going to move you forward. And then the, opening email or scrolling Facebook, like, put that into the times when you're not that busy. And then the other thing I try and do as well is I try and do a lot in the morning, because that's when my energy is highest. By mid-afternoon, I'm just like, I can't even think straight. I'm just like, I'm done. So, to know the good times for you. There are some people who are night owls and probably won't get going until like it's dark out, but know what the good times are for you, where you're most productive and most creative, and then just try and knock a lot of it out at the same time and just get going. And sometimes you knock it out, you're done, or sometimes you knock it out and the momentum gets you going on to doing more things and you get more done.
It's interesting because you've done some things that I think it's difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs who come from a corporate environment where you have a lot of sort of structure imposed upon you just by other people's meetings and all kinds of other stuff. And then to go into an entrepreneurial space where you're like, my whole day is my own. Maybe I'm going to do I'll just check some email and then I'll throw some laundry in and then I'll do this, right? You can so easy squirrel, we're famous for that. So was that just part of your makeup? How did you make that transition from the corporate world to working for yourself?
I'm not sure. I mean, it just like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it either. I mean, there's days that like it's, the end of the day and I'm like, what did I do today? I watched Netflix all day. That was great. And ate a lot. It's I guess it's just kind of being conscious of like, what is it that we need to do? What is it that I need to achieve this week? Who is it that I need to be talking to? Just being conscious of that and having kind of some sort of a to-do list or some sort of a mechanism that works for you to get things done. But I mean, like with me as well, there are days where it's just like, it's all laundry and, going to BJ's and picking up groceries and all the rest of it, that happens too. So, nobody's perfect.
Well, and that's part of it too, right? Giving yourself some grace and not like wasting the week beating yourself up because Monday was a failure, right?
Yeah, exactly. Monday's over. Let's get on with
Move on.
where we are
Tuesday's gonna
now.
be so much better, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So as far as advice that you would give to someone who, I mean, actually I've taken a huge detour. So let's go back to where we started talking about getting sponsors and getting folks interested. So if I can just summarize what I thought I heard you say as far as to get started is, like you say, follow your checkbook. So I would look and say, here are companies that I use, that I pay, that I need in my business to make me successful. Maybe they would like to, or some company like them, right, would like to work with me to promote themselves to my client or my listeners who I know are in a similar situation. Is that accurate?
And sometimes you can do that outside of sponsorship as well. Sometimes if they have affiliate programs, you can do it through that. And what an affiliate program is that you sign up with them so that you get a unique link that ties back to you. And then every time somebody buys through your link, you get like a percentage of it. So a commission coming back to you. And sometimes it's that simple as well, especially where you're starting out and you don't know your numbers or how well a sponsor is going to do, or if you're going to be able to fulfill everything that you're promising them when you're trying to bring them in. It's a great way to start. And then from the affiliate program, if you're starting to have like a lot of momentum with it, you can turn around to them and say, hey, it seems to me like this is going really well. This is how many clients I brought you last month. Would you like to take it a step further and maybe come on as a guest, as a sponsor guest, or, actually sponsor the show, and then to have that conversation and see, because it takes the risk away from them because they're only paying you if you actually perform. So it's a nice way to kind of start with podcasts or events or newsletters or anything else that you're trying to monetize. It's a nice way to do it. You're muted
Sorry,
again.
big
Yeah.
truck going by. Big noisy truck going by. So, okay, we'll just pause for a moment.
Yeah.
So that's another thing actually that I was wondering about and thinking about is, let's say that someone wanted to sponsor an episode, for example, one of the podcast episodes that like you'll interview me and then I'll get to talk about my product and I want to pay you for that opportunity. How do you know how to charge someone for something like that? Like, where do you begin for sponsorships or for that kind of thing? How do you know where to begin
Yeah,
to
I mean,
charge
I would
them?
probably begin low or maybe even free and make it a case study, just kind of a beta test of it. And like what I would ask them for is like, I want to, I want to share your results and your numbers and how this went for you. Just so that then you have like something that, company XYZ came in and we did this podcast and he ended up getting, 3 signups and that was worth $5,000 then, whatever the numbers are. So then you kind of have like a baseline of what it can do, because before you do it, you don't really know if it can do it or not. So just like the affiliate program, it's a nice kind of tester to figure out if something's going to work or not. And also, it's the other thing as well with doing that is it can help with your readership or your listenership, because if you have somebody from like a big corporation, even if it isn't like a very big person in that corporation, but if you have Jamie from Microsoft coming on, that's a really cool thing, so but if they promote it as well and use it in their PR and what they're doing, it can help with your readership as well. So it all kind of feeds into each other. It's all very cyclical.
Yeah, but it sounds like it starts with being intentional about who you're going to partner with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, because everyone has to win out of it. And a lot of times, like, it's a big red flag for me if somebody wants to hire me and they're like, how much money do you think you can bring in? And I'm like, well, how much value do you think you can bring the sponsor? It's like, it has to be, this isn't free money that they're coming on and putting a logo on your thing and, thinking that that's great. You may have some like, Microsoft or Marriott or something who are just looking for impressions, but that's really more the big guys who have the millions of views already that they would want to do that with. So yeah, and it's a relationship. This, if done right, can be a relationship for years and years and years. And you could be on to your next thing and doing something totally different, but they're still a good fit for you. And you call them up and say, hey, remember when we did that? This is what I'm doing now. Do you want to, talk about it and see if there's something in there for you as well? And, it's all about relationships and keeping those relationships really clean.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the idea of like, say it was Microsoft. Well, would that help my listeners? I mean, I'd actually rather be partnering with someone who's a really successful entrepreneur who started with nothing, and
yeah.
then they would be really adding more value. Whereas, Jamie from Microsoft is going to be a yawn.
But the only thing I can think is if they actually
box,
did
right?
kind of like a small, like, maybe these are the 5 shortcuts in Excel that you can make this big, something like that. If it was like good content that your listeners could use, that's one thing. But if it's just, you want to always bring value to everyone in that circle. So you want to make sure that everyone's receiving value out of it, or it doesn't really work.
Let me just. So it looks like we don't have time to get into the nuts and bolts of, unless you think it'll be quick to talk about how you would begin your business if you intended to someday sell it, right? Is there a way that you would go and start it?
So I sold 2, and one of them was the toner company, which was just a fluke. I just, I had to shut it down because I'd started 2 other businesses and I didn't have the bandwidth for it. So I called my competition and said, do you want to buy? And she's like, yes. And that was kind of it. So that was a very there was no planning in that whatsoever. It was very, very lucky on my behalf. The second one I sold, there was planning from the beginning. My thought in the beginning was to build it into a franchise, which I wasn't able to do, but by doing that, I built like a really huge database of customers, and I had a lot of really good systems in place. So it was kind of a bigger business. It had like 50 employees, all teenagers, which is fun. It was a family indoor playground, and we did like 40 birthday parties a week, and it was craziness. It was fun though. So there was a lot of intention behind that. And that one I went to a broker so that we could package it up and sell it. And, that worked out pretty well. So But yeah, you want to really try and make the business so that it's independent of you. So if it's like, if the business goes away, if you go away, it's not really very viable unless there's a good database or there's a good something there that that people are buying. So kind of think of it from the eyes of who will come in and sell you, sorry, who would come in and buy you, what they would be getting. You know, are they just going to buy themselves a job, which, you know, any of the kind of bigger guys aren't going to want that. They're going to want something that's kind of running and will continue to run and continue to take whatever profits you're making right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of procedures or a lot of documentation of, how to go in. Like I've understood, like from McDonald's, that there's a certain temperature and there's a certain this and a certain thickness, and like everything right down to the
It's
minutest
consistent.
detail,
Yeah.
right, is
Yeah,
all
and you probably don't
documented.
need quite that detail, but you do need to have the business so that like it is a pretty consistent experience for the guest or the customer, and that it's that, like, the thing with McDonald's is it was run by teenagers and seniors, which nothing against either of them, but you want something that's simple enough that you can pretty much hire anyone to come in and run it, or not run it, but be part of it, but also profitable and all the rest of it. So if you can make it so that you have all your processes kind of written down, so that if you were to come in for the first day and somebody handed you a SOP or standing operating procedure, you could kind of follow along the recipe and figure out what it is that you're meant to do, and at least make some sort of a job of it, even if you hadn't been trained. So you want to try and kind of always just frame things like that, so it's not just that, well, Billy always does that, so we don't need to worry about it because he's great at it, and I don't know what he does, but it's magic. It's like, well, that's not great because if anything happens, Billy, you're not getting that anymore. So
Exactly. Billy gets hit by a bus and that's the end of
yeah,
that, right?
that's the
It's
end of
always
that.
the hit by a bus scenario. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that must be exciting though, to go through that process of, building a business, knowing that it's going to grow up and be something exciting. And then to go through the process of, like you say, working with the broker to get it sold and things like that. That
Yeah,
seems
it
crazy.
definitely was exciting. It's yeah, for sure, because it's like not everyone gets to do that. So I feel like I'm incredibly grateful that I was able to do it, because yeah, it was a ton of fun. Ton of fun, ton of heartache, ton of tears, all of the above.
Okay. No, not really.
Yeah.
I feel like we have touched on so many interesting topics, and I've got a ton of value from speaking to you. I know the audience has as well. But what other things, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you? Anything that you think that you would love to share with people who are either
Yeah,
entrepreneurs or hope to be entrepreneurs?
sure. For entrepreneurs or hope to be entrepreneurs, I mean, I'm a big one for just do it. One of my favorite sayings is seek the swift sword. So if it's going to fail, let's fail quickly so we can move on and do something else, because life is short. Obviously, you don't want to, just throw caution to the wind either, but like, don't overanalyze, don't be afraid to start, or at least make a start and see if it's going to work out or not, and then be ready to pivot if it's not working the way you want. Maybe it's going to be a different way, and just have faith in that. In terms of finding sponsors and stuff like that, I do have, if it's okay with you, I have like a little 15-minute training that's free that they can.
Yeah, please.
It's based on the whole follow your checkbook thing. That it's a one pager which has a video of the training within it, and then it's editable. It's PDF, but it's editable, so they can go in and edit it out and start making their lists and just start building that database of prospects that might be good for them. So they can find that at findingsponsors.com as well, or at connectedsponsors.com/finding sponsors.
And we'll put all the links to that in the,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that in
yeah.
the, is that in the sheet that you sent me?
That's in the sheet that I sent you. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great. So
yeah.
we'll put all those links in the show notes and people can find them, and yeah,
Yeah, and then we have a Facebook group as well where a lot of people hang out. If they want to come on there, they're welcome to. There's just it's still kind of small, but what my hope is that there'll be a lot of open discussion about things. If you have issues or problems, there'll be either myself or somebody else on there to advise, or give resources or whatever to help as well. So
Okay, and that is that Facebook group connected sponsors as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's connected, ED,
Connected sponsors. Yeah,
sponsors with an S. So,
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. I think I sent you the link, but if I didn't, I'll
Yeah,
shoot it
you
over
did.
to you.
No, you
Yeah.
did. You did. I just wanted to, in case folks like
Yeah.
don't want to go to the show notes and they just want to
Yeah.
listen.
Well, too bad for you then.
Exactly. If you can't go to the show notes, then you can't have the link. So there. Excellent. Well, I'm definitely going to check all that out because I want to fill out your follow the checkbook, and it's smart.
Yeah.
Smart. Good idea.
Yeah, and definitely, Christine, reach out to me as well if you want to brainstorm some more offline. We can definitely chat about your podcast and
Oh, thank you.
figure
Thank
out
you.
who
Well, I'm
we
actually,
find.
and this is actually, I think by the time this airs, my new podcast will have already launched, but it's still worth talking about. That it's a daily format. So it's a little bit
Yeah.
different. It's a lot of the same sorts of guests and stuff, but we're going to start off and it'll just be a little bit different. Like Monday is just me introducing the guests, and then, like much shorter bits
Yeah.
and pieces. And then Tuesday, they talk about themselves. Wednesday, they talk about where they are today. Thursday, they talk with advice to the listener. And then Friday actually is going to be a call-in. So people would be able
Oh,
to
wow.
call and ask you questions and say, Sheila, we're talking, I've been listening to you all week talk
Yeah.
about this thing, and I have this question. So they can either call in or, write a note
That's
in.
amazing. I'd love to come back on that one. That's
All right,
amazing.
excellent. Yeah, I think it's just I haven't done it yet, obviously, but I've been interviewing some people along with that in mind.
Yeah.
And now we just need to edit those things. So yeah, all right, good. Yeah, that'll be fun.
That's amazing.
And awesome. Sheila, thank you so much.
Christine, this was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for accommodating my schedule. I know it wasn't easy, but I really appreciate it.
No, not at all. I mean, it's good. It's good. I mean, my schedule's been a little crazy too, because as we talked about before, I am sitting in a hotel in, where am I? Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Wow.
Looking out over the beautiful town square. It's a really cute town. Lots of, I love stone buildings, lots of beautiful stone buildings and stuff. And everyone's been real nice. I'm in this historic hotel, and where the elevator says that it's deliberately small because back in the day, the cowboys would try to bring their horses up in the elevator. So to discourage that, they have a small elevator. I'm like, wow.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And thanks, listener, for listening. I really appreciate you being here. I know you have a choice of 2 million podcasts to choose from. So I'm very grateful that you're here today and that you got to hear Sheila's wisdom. And I have no idea what's coming next week, but I know it's going to be great. So don't miss that, and have a fantastic week.